this session, which I'm pretty excited about actually, because actually for me, I learn a lot. And I think this session, we're going to focus on the actual practicalities of sort of fueling, because I think we can talk about the theory a lot and talk about, grams per hour and liters per hour and milligrams per hour and all that sort of stuff. But unless you can actually execute in a race, and certainly execute in training to help you execute in a race, then it sort of all becomes, nonsensical, I guess, in a way. So we're going to focus on 6 athletes. 2, unfortunately, aren't here as far as I'm aware. 4 are, which is really great, and really thankful for that, because I think you guys are going to be the stars of the show. And we'll just get into it. So like all these sessions, please, raise your hand, ask questions, things like that. I haven't put in a lot of detail on the slides. So in terms of brands and things like that, if you are the athlete we're talking about, please give as much information as you feel comfortable with. Okay, so what we're going to go through today, and we can jump into as much of this as we want, is we're going to look at the bike setup. And these are key considerations, obviously, for every athlete. So your bike setup, how are you managing to hold all the nutrition that you're planning on doing? Using on-course nutrition versus carrying. Quite a few of the athletes actually do talk about they use the on-course nutrition. And I think what that comes down to is probably point 4, which is practice, practice, practice. So if you are going to use the on-course nutrition, know what that on-course nutrition is, i.e. for any of the official Ironman events, that would be Morton. If you're going to use the Morton gels, especially for the run, make sure you're practicing with those. And as long as you're comfortable, I guess there is that toss-up between having to go through aid stations and collect versus just carrying it on you, and you've got to weigh up whether the weight is an option. And I know Pat's going to talk about his opinion on weight, but we'll talk about that. Having obviously a backup plan. Quite a few of the athletes here do mention sort of backup plans in terms of bottles, either having extra bottles, extra caffeine, extra salt, extra gels, just in case the unfortunate happens and something gets dropped. The use of special needs bags, certainly only applicable for Ironman, but the pros and cons of special needs. And as with everything, it's practice, practice, practice. So I think as much as we talk about practicing gut training from preloading before sessions, during session, practicing that, same with hydration, practicing sweat tests, practicing carb capacity tests, you also need to practice carrying all this stuff, because that's going to help you become quite mechanistic in terms of the way you approach the bike and the run. Does anyone have any other considerations that I've sort of missed when we're talking about nutrition from a practical standpoint?
The one other thing I'll note, Scott, is for on-course nutrition. So was in St. George for the World Championship this year, and I spoke to several athletes that said, like, Ironman actually ran out of Morton gels on the course. So one thing to consider, from relying on the nutrition there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a shocker on their behalf, but certainly, I mean, that would be a pretty terrifying situation if you got through a desert part of the course and didn't have any sort of gels on you. So look, in terms of that, I think you should always have some gels on you, carrying them in your back pocket, something like that. I think actually Philip's nodding his head, because I believe that's what he does. He has at least 2 in his back pockets just in case. And, I think you've just got to prepare, what is it? Failure to prepare is planning to, oh God, I can't even remember. What is it? Pat, help me out. Failing to plan is planning to fail, I should say. So, I think always be prepared for something to go wrong. Okay, so we're going to look at we're going to look at Lena, who unfortunately can't join us because it's about 2 in the morning there. Lyndsey Foster, who's unfortunately training because it's morning here in Australia. Then we're going to go through Pat, Philip, Julia, and Elliot. And the nice thing here is we've got a nice mix of sort of Ironman 70.3, and Elliot's got obviously Ultraman as well. We don't have any Olympic here, and that may be something that we can do at another time. I guess the nutrition for Olympic and sprint distance is a little bit different, but there are some cool things that you can do for those as well. Okay, so Lena is a pro. So she has this S-Works bike, which I don't know if does anyone ride with this particular bike? I thought it was, it's a pretty interesting bike, but the thing that's circled there, number 3, is a 1.2 litre tank, and she fills this with pH 1000. She actually puts in, she has 2 pH 1000, so she has 1,000 milligrams within that 1.2 litre. So it's just about, what's that? It works out about 800 milligrams or so. Yeah, about 800 milligrams per litre. So she uses that. What she also has is on the, not the down tube, what do you call that tube? Sorry. The tube underneath her handlebars, she has also a bottle, which she uses first. So she has a bottle there, she will get through that, and that is just pure water, and she will discard that after that's been used, so that drops a little bit of weight. She uses the Bond Rager Bento, which she is number 2, which is circled, and that's inbuilt into that tube, and she carries 5 to 7 pH gels. She also, up the top circle, which looks like it's circling the bottle holder, she actually, what she does is actually she cuts a pH gel with a razor blade, puts a very fine slit in that, and actually puts in her 200 milligram caffeine pill, and then she uses an elastic band to tape that to that crossbar. The reason she does that is because she doesn't want to have the caffeinated gel within her bento box. So that's what she does. I thought that was quite interesting. I asked her whether she loses any of the pH gel out of that, and she says no. The way she positions it is the slit is facing up when it's elasticated to the bike. It just gives her the confidence that she knows that's a 200 milligram caffeine gel, and not any confusion with that. In terms of the way she manages her run, she just uses pH gels, or she used to use Cliff Blocks, but she will just use those in her jersey pockets, and also the advantage of being a female, she stuffs them down her bra. Does anyone have any questions about that? Does anyone do the gel with the caffeine pill inside it? I thought it's quite an interesting way of doing it. It's certainly, because I know we're going to talk to Pat, and he carries his caffeine pills in a box. I thought it was quite interesting that someone could do something like that. Someone was going to say something.
Scott, I think Danny. Scott, I think
I
Danny used to do that. Can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think Danny used to do that with the I remember Danny's not here, I don't think, but no, I think she used to put oh, you are here? If Danny's here, Danny used to put her caffeine in the E-tap when it used to have the twist off top.
Yes, I miss those, because that's exactly what I did. I would just twist off the top of one of the E-tap and put the pill inside there. Now they make the tear top, so I'm back to like trying to figure out how to carry this pill somehow, but putting it in a gel just so it stays there, so it's not a loose pill somewhere, is a great idea.
Yeah.
How do you keep it from not sinking to the bottom of the pack?
You don't.
Like, how do you guarantee you get it out, or does it dissolve?
I tested it a few times, and I'm able to tell, like, it has a taste to it, so I'm able to tell like when I got it in, because I could feel it on my tongue. So I never had a problem with getting it out.
It's interesting. I guess, Pat, what would be interesting, does it dissolve? And I don't know if it does. Lena didn't mention if it does dissolve, but I think the way that she does as well, because it's horizontal, she probably just puts the pill at the very top. And then, I mean, she said she doesn't have any issues, and she said she always can get it in. So it'd be something to experiment with. I mean, my main concern was that the gel would actually leak out, but she was saying with the
No,
pH,
just stick a piece of tape over the slit.
yeah, you could do that as well.
Take it up. Yeah,
that's the engineering. So yeah, I guess as long as because if you put it high enough and taped it up and then ripped it off when you rip off the top, it probably wouldn't be a problem. I guess the only thing you'd have to consider is making sure that you can rip off a big enough portion of the top of the gel to actually make sure you get the entire contents out. But something to practice with, I thought.
So I actually have a solution for that, both for caffeine or salt pills, in case you're taking more than one, obviously, because if not, it's going to be moving around. But I don't know if you guys know those like Tic Tac Fresh Mint containers.
Oh yeah.
So I dispose of the mints, or eat them or whatever, and then I use that, and it's a lot better than a small Ziploc bag, because when you're on TT position, it's a little hard to kind of open it up or close it. And this one, you can just open it with your mouth, take the pill, and then just close it pretty quickly, and it's pretty safe when you're on TT position or running. So it's and there's no water getting into it, so it's pretty good.
I'll show you something that one of the other athletes used, but I think that's a great idea, because everyone's always talking about either TikTok packets or even your airline earplug, like the earbud little packets that they come in, but also using a pill packet. So I'll show you that. So this is Lyndsey Foster, as I said. Lyndsey just won UK Ironman in her age group, and she was good enough to actually mock up this photo, so I thought it was really nice. But she uses 2 bottles, and which I thought was really interesting. She's prepared to just fill up the bottle between her handlebars at every aid station with water. So I asked her how she does that. She said she just grabs a bottle, dumps it in, and keeps going. The other bottle, which she has, you call that the down tube, just so I know. I always call it something else, but anyway, she had that filled. Yeah, cool. She has that filled with 14 Coda gels. Coda is, I think, an Australian brand. She uses that. It's an interesting taste. It actually has quite a lot of sodium in it. So she will tend to use that as her form, and she never used to do that. We actually practiced drinking her gels, and she, as it says there, she topped it up with a little bit of water just to improve the consistency of that. And she drew lines on the bottle. As you can see, she's using a clear bottle there. I know I've talked about drinking ETAP and precision gels with a little bit of water added in. But she found that extremely useful. Had to get used to it by practicing, but certainly managed to have all her gels and all her shot blocks. As you can see, she also had 14 individual cubes, which were out of the wrappers and then just individually placed in the bento box. Again, she had those all there, so she didn't need special needs bag for a full distance Ironman because of this, the way she set the bike up with this, which I thought was really good. She also actually rode, I think there was something in this race in particular, they made them race with a race belt. She had to have it on. So she said the advantage of that was she had all her pills, like her salt tabs. Sorry, there's a mistake there. It shouldn't say 1.2 litre tank. She had all her salt tabs in that race belt on there, which she said she was using periodically through that ride as well. Does anyone have any questions about that? I thought it was interesting that she takes out all the shot blocks and places them individually in the bento box. I guess the only thing there is make sure your bento box is extremely clean.
I actually use parchment paper in my bento box for that reason. So I put the cooking parchment, I just cut up a piece, like the waxy paper, stick it into my bento box and dump my gels in there. So if they melt, they only melt on the paper. But
does that then cause the paper to come out when you pull them? Or
no,
do you stick the parchment? Who am I talking to? Sorry.
I just put the paper in. I don't know. I also have a Cervelo, but it's like attached. It's a very skinny pod. So the paper stays in because it curves around, and the top of the bento box is stiffer. And then I also do it on my X Lab on my road bike, but I toss the gels in, and then they're easier to get out because they're not stuck to the side of the bento box. They're just coming off the wax paper.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, it's little intricacies like that that I think can make a huge difference, especially like if the gels or the shot box gets stuck in there, then you're just faffing about trying to get them out. So this is the first athlete that I've actually come across that actually puts them in individually. Most athletes, as we'll see, tend to cut the pack in half. Now, Lyndsey's very small, so she tended to eat each individual shot block on its own, whereas majority of the athletes, I'll encourage you to eat 3 at a time. So it's just one of those considerations. If you are a small athlete or can't cope with eating maybe 3 chews at a time to get sort of that 25 to 30 grams, then I think you could do that. Otherwise, certainly depending on the size of the bento box, just cut them in half.
I wouldn't cut them in half. I take the whole sleeve because it fits nicely. I have a Cervelo as well, so it fits longwise in my bento box, and I just cut the very top off and I squeeze them out. I do eat 3, and I eat 3 at a time because it's like, it's 25 grams of carbs, right? So
yeah, exactly. And then looking at her run, she uses a race belt. I know not all of you use a race belt. She just tends to. She has her gel flasks. It's 2 gel flasks with 5 Coda gels topped up, and she also puts 2 Coda electrolyte tabs in that. So I think she was consuming 500 milligrams of sodium within each of those little flasks. You can see the flask there that she's got, and you can see the lines that she's drawn on that. So again, what we practiced during training was in her kitchen first, she practiced squeezing that, putting it in her mouth and then spitting it out and measuring how much gel estimate was coming out. And then she would just practice squeezing that on the run and making sure that she was getting the approximate amount of 1 gel per squeeze and then half a gel, every 15 minutes, and knowing how much that was. So she tended again to go with lower amounts fairly frequently for her size, just based on how she felt from a GI perspective. I'm completely aware that some of the science does say try and consume larger amounts of carbohydrates, could be advantageous in terms of reducing GI distress and also improving carbohydrate oxidation. Lyndsey chose to do it this way because otherwise she was getting GI distress. She ends up winning. Again, science is science, but practicalities are practicalities. So just always keep that in mind. She does run with a race belt as well, which, as I said, a lot of athletes don't like to do, but again, up to you. Any questions on that? Okay, Pat Romano, you're on. Talk us through it. You might as well talk us through because just so everyone knows, Pat's an engineer. So if you saw his email to me describing his race day bike and run setup, it is like a full essay. So I've tried to condense it as best as possible. But I'm happy to share that, Pat, if you're happy to share it.
Yeah, you can. There's a couple of autocorrect typos. But, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I'll share that on Facebook. So do you want to talk us through your bike setup and what you do?
The preface for me is that I had my salinity measured of my sweat, and I'm one of those weird 3 standard deviations to the right guys. I'm about 1900 milligrams per liter, so I need a shit ton of salt or I fall apart. So I carry 3 bottles of pH 1500, and people have gotten on my case about weight and stuff like that. I'm like, look, everyone carries 2, and that first one, because I drink so much on the bikes, I'm also a fairly medium sweat volume kind of guy. That first one's gone so fast, it doesn't really matter. And the amount of time that you would spend, like a pig at a trough trying to get a bottle at an aid station, I don't have to mix anything. I don't have to dump anything into any ports. And by the way, I hate hydration systems because they spike my heart rate. I don't want to have to suck on a straw. I don't want to have to deal with having to bend over when I'm climbing, all that sort of stuff. So I just use bottles. I practice. That's my training setup and my racing setup. Aside from wheels, I'll change the wheels. But I've practiced crosswind, aero bars, still can get the bottle out, put it in sideways. It's just practice, 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 practice. So since I train with bottles, I use it. And if I'm having a bad day, I might need to take a bottle of water, or if it's really hot, but usually 324s gets me through a half Ironman bike ride. And if I were doing an Ironman, what I do in my special needs bag is, and this is, you guys are going to laugh at me. So I take 324s with my electrolyte in it, freeze it. If you can get access, if you're in a hotel, we'll usually do it for you. Freeze the bottles. And then I just, when you get one of those like grocery boxes delivered, you got the Mylar covered bubble wrap. It's a pretty good insulator. So I have these little bottle sleeves, and I just use like a little clip at the top. And if you freeze a bottle, stuff them in there, and then just clip it at the top and stuff it in your special needs bag. Lo and behold, it's still cold, not frozen, but still cold when you hit the special needs point. So I've reloaded that way in several Ironmans. It's, nice to not have a really, really hot bottle of electrolyte. And normally I'm more than a 6-bottle Ironman guy, just because I'm sweating. So I would normally have a bottle or two of water in addition to that. But that's bike. So for a half Iron, I don't touch the aid stations at all. I eat a ton.
Pat, just on the bottles, how do you, obviously there's two things I want to ask is the elastic bands, why do you put those on?
Oh yeah. So my ejection proof system is in my tail. You see ponytail holders, they're just ponytail holders. And what I always do, the bottle between your aero bars, you should never toss. Well, you can toss it when you're replacing, but I always replace a bottle from my tail into my BTA cage in between my arms. That fills in the aerodynamic hole. You never want that cage empty, ever. So you don't toss your last bottle, even if it's empty. You leave it there, because that just blocks the hole there. It's like a fairing. So it's a good thing to have. And I have my bike computer positioned immediately in front of my bottle, and my hands kind of drape around it. So that entire center area is filled in, and that's actually pretty important for your drag. But what I'll do is reach behind when I want to do a bottle exchange. I'll usually do it near an aid station, toss the BTA bottle, just reach around, undo the ponytail holder, and then clip it in, back into the cage between my aero bars. Also, that's another reason I never mix food and hydration. Those hydration bottles, there's very little carbohydrate in those bottles. I would never do that, because I have to be able to vary the amount of liquid intake, but I'm not varying the amount of calories. So I just don't want the commingling of those two things.
So Pat, you end
that's
up
pretty much it.
Pat, you end up with 0 bottles at the end of the race. Is that what you do?
At the end of the race, I have an empty bottle between my arms, because I'll literally suck down everything I can. But you never want to toss the one between your arms, even if it's empty, because it's doing you aerodynamic benefit. And you need to, like I said, if you're using bottles, you just need to learn how to grab them with either hand, because if you're side saddled because you're in a crosswind, you have to be able to use your left hand or your right hand, and you have to be able to do that when you're in your aero bars, right? Because you don't want to come out of aero to drink. So It's a bit of practice.
And I think your point there, it is something that we talk about a lot, or certainly I've talked about, is that distinction. And I think certainly for a 70.3, you can get away with it without drinking your calories, because obviously if it's a cold race and you're not drinking much, then you're obviously not taking in as many calories, which I think is a really important point. So it is a toss up. So I think knowing your course and what you're going to be doing, it does become critical in terms of if you are going to use carbohydrates in a liquid form, know that you're going to have to drink those, because if it's a cold race and you're over consuming your liquid because of the carbohydrates in it, there can obviously become pretty serious implications with that, with the overconsumption of fluid, and result in potentially, mild, moderate, or severe hyponatremia. So it is a consideration, something you want to practice and go into a race knowing how much fluid you're going to need, and whether you're going to consume those carbohydrates in liquid form or food form. And, to Pat's credit, he can still get in 100, easily 110, 120 grams an hour on the bike with the system that he's got in. I think I've got another slide, so what you'll see
let's back up for 1 second.
That's what I was just going to say, because there's a couple of things.
If you look at right there, the Cervelo's got a dual bento. It's got a little teeny useless bento up by the stem, and then it's got the real long one. What I do, and you could just use a rubber band if you didn't have this. I stick one of those senior citizen like AM/PM pill cases that you can get at the drugstore right there. I stick it there, and I've got an exact copy. We'll talk about the run bundle in a second. I put everything in my hat. My belief is you should never leave anything in transition loose and stuff your pockets. That's just a waste of time. And also it gets kicked around when you leave transition and stuff. So I don't leave anything in the transition area unbundled. So everything is literally on my bike. So I get out of the water, and it's just a sequence. I can step out of my wetsuit while I'm putting my helmet on. I always use a visor, never glasses, and I always ride barefoot regardless of the temperature. And if it's cold, I'll put toe covers on my bike, and my shoes are already clipped in my bike, and I use the typical rubber band method to keep them off the ground, unless it's a full Ironman where you can't do that. And then I will run to my rack with my shoes in my hand, because running in bike shoes is a pain in the ass, and I'll put the shoes on at the rack and I'm still barefoot. So everything is on that bike. If I can, I rack from behind, because getting those bottles, which are proud of my tail, out from under the bike rack sometimes slows you down. So a lot of times I'll just set up my run gear, because there's no bike gear to set up on the ground, because all the bike stuff is there, and my helmet is, draped across, usually the tailpiece. I'll just, close the little clasp and hang it from its chin strap. So I get out of the water, hit my bike, put my helmet on while my wetsuit's coming off of my feet, unrack my bike, and go. So there's zero like stuffing in my pockets or anything. And my stuff that doesn't fit in my bento is rubber banded to one of the elbow pads. So I've got a Cliff Bar, typically, because I only use one solid bar, rubber banded to one elbow pad. And I rearrange the cupboards while I'm rolling out of transition, put my shoes on, and then I'll move my pill case to one pocket and the Cliff Bar to another, and then there you go. So that's that, and then you're out and you're on the course. You got all your food. The run, I have a spare copy of my pill case, and on the left it's pH capsules. I'll use them on the bike if I need a bottle of water. I'll just use water plus pH. And on the right are caffeine pills. I always just stick extra in there. And I have an exact copy of that in case I used it on the bike. I do take one caffeine pill on the bike, but in case I drop it or wind up using pH because I've lost a bottle or whatever, I have an exact copy rubber banded to my hat bundle. And if that, everything is in my hat, my glasses, my race belt, and then I have two separately rubber banded groups of 3 gels, because I'll use 5 gels, one every 15 minutes on a half iron run, and I take an extra just in case. So 3 and 3 in little rubber band bundles in that hat, glasses, race belt. And then if I know that I still have my pill case from the bike ride, I just toss that real fast while I'm running. And so for me, transition out as I'm already out of my bike shoes, that bike gets racked from behind. I put my socks are sitting inside my shoes. So sock, shoes, grab the hat, gone. So zero, I unpack that hat as I'm leaving. So I'll just, put my hat on, put my glasses on, put my gels in my pocket. Last to go is my race belt on, but I'm already, 200 yards on the run course before that's unpacked. So again, zero stuff happening in transition, and you've got everything you need.
And I really like, obviously it's the engineering in you, but I love the bundling. I love also the fact that you create a backup pack. And I think, like Philip, to your point, this is another option for an alternative to the Tic Tac. What I like about this is that you can separate two products, which I think is really smart. But I love the fact that Pat's got double just in case something goes wrong. I love that he bundles, his gels into, splits them into 2 lots of 3, but also carries an extra, knowing that he only uses 5 gels in a race in a 70.3. I also just wanted to note there what he talks about in full Ironman, that he keeps a spare pair of socks in his special needs bag, which I think I haven't heard of anyone doing that. But look, people might say, oh, that's ridiculous, but for the couple of minutes it might take to change your socks to not get blisters. I think it's great. I think Pat, it's smart.
Yeah. So Scott, I've been rained on more than I can count. I just did this escape from Alcatraz, pouring rain. I'm fine in rain. I train in rain all the time, so it doesn't matter. And I bike with barefoot, but you're not running barefoot. Yeah. But man, if you're in an Ironman and you're soaking wet, either from someone squirting you with a hose or puddle at an aid station or something, you're going to blister. So I just stop when you get your special needs bag and change your socks if you're really wet and blistering. And then I also keep a throwaway long sleeve running shirt, an old tattered one, just in case, because I have been in a lot of situations where the weather changes. St. George is a perfect example, but it's a half iron, so you wouldn't do this. But in an Ironman, it can go from, the weather report says warm and it turns into, hail and rain and it's cold. You're going to freeze your ass off. So I just basically keep a shirt that I never want to see again if I don't need it. And I just leave it in the special needs bag. And then there's an exact copy of everything that's in that, all the nutrition, and another one of those, but I use it in a little plastic bag, another plastic bag of backup pills in that special needs bag. And who cares if you ever see it again?
Yep, that's good. I really like that. Thank you, Pat. Very thorough, as I expected. And I will share your email about that into the Facebook group. So next is Philip. Philip's with Mana Endurance. And I thought, I really thank you for your very professional photos, Philip. Clearly the best photos out of everyone.
They're from the website, so
I was like, wow, that's really good. Anyway, do you want to talk us through your bike setup? What bike are you racing with? And it's just talk us through what its capacity is and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott, for inviting me. And
no, that's great.
Here. Fortunately, I am riding the new Speedmax, which is I've been riding Canyon for a while, and Canyon is one of our team sponsors. So fortunately, I've got the chance to ride this bike for over a year, and it's a great bike. And obviously, compared to the older model, it has a lot more internal storage, including the new bladder that is kind of like a camelback, if you want to think about it, inside the frame. So you can basically store 750 ml in that bladder. And then I also carry an Elite Aero bottle, which is in the middle of the frame. And then in the back, behind the saddle, I carry a 750, usually a Martin 750 bottle, but I just like Pascual, is that how you pronounce it? I usually toss it as well and exchange, especially in a full Ironman. In a half Ironman, I can pretty much rely with this setup and just grab some water on course. But in a full Ironman, I'll exchange that bottle. And then I have the bento box where you can store about, I'd say, 5 gels. And similar to what Pascual was also mentioning right now, instead of leaving, like pills or whatever on your T2, what I do is already leave my Tic Tac box or whatever I'm using in the bento box at the bottom. So when I'm already getting to T2, like maybe 10 minutes before, and the gels are gone, I just grab that, put it in my back pocket, and then I'm ready for, the run, already having that. And then the other thing I do is when I'm on the bike course, especially in a full Ironman, I'm constantly renewing the gels, because again, Martin is also one of our sponsors. That's what I train with. So fortunately, they're on course as well. So when I get to T2, I already have a few gels on my back pockets as well. and I don't have to lose time grabbing stuff on T2. Normally in half Ironman, I just do a mix between, you know, pH hydration tablet and 320 mix from Martin. And then on full Ironmans, I'll maybe do the first 2 hours like that, but then the remaining, I guess, 2 and fraction or 3, depending on the race, I'll have, you know, 3 gels per hour, which I store some in the bento and some in my back pockets. And then in T1, I'll also have a similar strategy as to the one Pascual has, where I'll freeze bottles. So I'll have a bottle with, I don't like Gatorade endurance formula in general. It's not, I don't like it, to be honest. So I have a frozen bottle with pH hydration on T2 and sometimes some of my special needs as well. However, going back to Scott's initial point of a plan B, I do know exactly what each bottle of Gatorade has and how I can mix that in my strategy, because, you know, bottles can fall. Like I saw, like Pascual set up, you know, there's some rubber bands to kind of hold them, but sometimes you're grabbing it and there's a small bump and it falls from your hand. So you always need to have a plan B, and you need to know what's on course to be able to execute another strategy if, you know, yours doesn't work out, right? So again, it's not my ideal scenario, but I've had multiple races where, you know, I've relied on Gatorade or whatever is on course, and, you know, it's gone well. Unfortunately, this last weekend I raced in Oregon and I dropped my bottle, my big Martin bottle on the back, which was pretty much an hour's worth of nutrition or more. And since I knew the course, I knew that I was about to get to a turnaround. I knew there was an aid station right after it. So I said, okay, I'll just grab a bottle of Gatorade there. You know, it's a half Ironman, it's fine. And then I grabbed the bottle, had a sip, and then I hit the same railroad track again and it fell. So I literally messed up my plan B. And that was a problem in the run. So I obviously bonked on the run. I started the run not feeling good, and, you know, it wasn't, you know, the race that I was expecting, but at least, you know, I had a decent result anyways. And then on the run, I'll just rely on Martin gels when it comes to food, because that's what I train with. So that's easy. Of course, it's when Ironman announced that they were partnering with Martin, that was great news for me and for all of our team, because we believe it's a great product and that's what we train with. So
Philip, where's the spares kit on your bike?
The what? Sorry?
Can you get the spares kit on your bike? You know, where you keep your tube and stuff like that?
Oh, it's, you see where the N is on the frame?
Yeah.
So you have a repair kit right there. You can see, like, there's like a small line right there.
Yeah. Because what I do is that, because I don't use the Aero bottle. I have a 3D printed little spares box that has my CO2s and stuff in it. But I stuff emergency food. I've got one gel and one sleeve of shot blocks there that I don't plan on touching. I can reach it while I'm riding. You may not be able to be, but that's a backup plan for food.
Yeah, no, in my case, it'd be impossible to, I mean, I could probably reach it, but to actually take that lid out and put it back, it's like,
you'd probably have to pull over.
Yeah.
But it's there.
At least you have a plan B. Yeah.
At least you have it. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, though. I mean, Philip, if you did have, say, some gels stuck in that, and what happened to you, would it be, in your opinion, worth pulling over, getting them and putting them in your bento box? Would it, in your opinion, would it have been worthwhile?
Sorry, if I lose nutrition, like,
so say you lost your 2 bottles like you did, like, very unfortunate, but as to Pat's point, he keeps emergency nutrition in that, the, what do you call it?
In the storage.
Storage. If you pulled over and pulled that out and put it in your bento, how much time would that take you, and would that time be worthwhile?
Well, so actually this weekend, when I dropped the bottle, like just a little behind me was another coach from my team, and I was stopping to grab the bottle, and he asked me, "Are you going to stop?" And I looked back then and I was like, "Okay, no, I'm not going to stop." So then but in a full Ironman, I'll stop for sure. Like I wouldn't, you know, mess around with nutrition on a full Ironman and a half. It's like, okay, I'll do whatever's on course, and kind of, you know, I can deal with, and even in this case, like I paid on the run, right? Like,
but that's what I mean. Like, how much time did you lose on the run, in your opinion?
It's relative, because I don't know if this was what actually caused the situation, but I ran a 1:28 half marathon, and I normally run like sub 1:22. So it's, again,
so 6 minutes would getting off the bike and getting that out cost you 6 minutes, do you think?
No, but here's another thing you can do, because I don't need to, because I've got a conveniently accessed spare box. Just tape a couple under your saddle. Yeah. Between your saddle rails. Just stick them there. It's not going to hurt you.
Well, the gels is not the problem, because you can grab the gels on course. The problem is the liquid hydration mix, which, you know.
Yeah, but just substitute something else. Like on the bike, if you drop it, you can just go to shot blocks or gels on the bike. It's not ideal, but it's still, you're getting your calories in.
You could grab a water, I guess. So, yeah, and your bento box, Philip, where is it? Is it underneath just behind the water where you fill the water bottle?
You see my knee, there's like a small bump, which is the one you see where you're putting the bottle for the hydration. So if you see the bottle where the bottle, the bottle is, right after that is where the bento box starts. So
you just flip that up. And how many gels? That can hold 5 gels, can it?
You can probably put 5 gels pretty tight. It's not too big. The one that the old Speedmax used to have was a little, I feel is bigger, but of course, like you need to, it's one thing for the other. This one is like integrated in the frame, so you don't have the thing kind of like
sticking out.
It's one, I mean, yeah.
And obviously, I mean, I know those SIS Go gels are actually very big. I imagine Morton's a little bit smaller than those SIS gels as well, so you can probably fit more in, whereas those SIS gels, you may only be able to fit 3 in.
Correct. I think, I mean, I don't know. I used to use SIS quite a few years ago, and they're pretty big, but yeah, they're still like, you know, they're liquid, so you can kind of like stuff them in and mold them in the bento box. So I feel
cool. And your caffeine and salt pill canister, you just have in your back jersey pocket?
Yeah, sometimes I stuff it in the bento box, like I told you, so that way I don't lose time in transition. And then before I'm getting off the bike, I put it back on my pockets. Yeah,
cool. Any other little tips and tricks that you use?
Well, I thought, you know, similar to Pasquale on a full Ironman, I try to avoid special needs. I try to make my homework and understand how that special needs is going to be on each course, because sometimes there's going to be courses where you have a person actually, like, they see you pass, they see your number, and they scream, or they kind of call to a next aid station, and they're waiting for you with the bag, and you can kind of even, but then there's other aid stations where you literally need to like walk in to those like racks, like almost like as if it was T1, and kind of find your bag in the middle of like 2,300 other bags. And I'm not going to stop for that. Right. So depending on what kind of special needs they'll have on course, I'll assess, you know, my strategy in terms of what I'm carrying and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of sometimes I'll leave a frozen bottle on I will always leave stuff on special needs just in case, but again, it's something you need to be willing to, you know, lose if you know, you don't stop. But yeah, you need to have a plan B. Like, you know, like if you lost all your nutrition, I think it's worth stopping. Doesn't matter what.
Completely. Yeah, you wouldn't try and do a full Ironman without any nutrition. I think it'd be a disaster. So I think again, yeah, it's just planning ahead.
And one more. So this is a thing that it happened in St. George, and I've never actually done it. And I just remember because I saw the picture. It's funny. I wasn't even going to talk. I just remember literally. So I dropped the bottle there as well. I think it's like a recurring thing. And since it was a hot course, like you guys probably know how it played out. It was like 90 something degrees, very, you know, dry. It was a tough day out there. I don't know if anybody raced it here. But if you see my tri-suit, I literally put a bottle inside, and I have it like right there. It's probably not the most aerodynamic thing. Right there in that photo, I'm probably reaching out to the bottle. So that's why I'm not in aero position. But I feel that if you're properly tucked in aero position, it's not going to be, you know, too bad. But yeah, sometimes I feel it's better to be properly hydrated than to, you know, lose or have, you know, an idea.
So were you getting that bottle, you were drinking that first and then discarding that? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes
And I
it's
think
even-
like whatever works.
Sometimes it's even for a few seconds on, like when you're climbing and you're not like going too fast, or you're still kind of holding the handlebars on a steep climb. Drink it, put it here, drink a little more, and then toss it, you know, or put it on the back. So
Yeah. No, that's great.
Hey, Philip, question on the special needs. Does Ironman list out like what the setup is, or you have to just ask around?
like,
Yeah, no, it's usually in the athlete guide.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
I've never. I mean, I would agree. If they had something where you had to walk in and find it. I mean, I've never seen that. I'm sure it exists
Yeah,
on
there
some
is, yeah.
courses. Most of the courses, there's a guy with a bullhorn that sees your number and yells ahead. And in every Ironman I've ever done where I've used special needs, they already have your bag untied and are right there.
Right. But it
Right,
happens.
so
Like one time I did Ironman Malaysia, and you know, it's more humid than Kona. It's brutal. It's hotter. And when I looked at the special needs, you know, station, it was bigger than T1 or T2. So I was like, I'm not going to stop here. And there was like one bag after the other. It was like, you know, no way I was going to stop there.
How do you see that, Philip? Is it on the website, or where do you?
Yeah, in the athlete handbook, or
Athlete
I guess
guide.
if you in the athlete guide, or if you go to the briefing, they're probably going to talk about that there as well.
Yeah, I think it's such an important factor. And if if athletes are considering using special needs, certainly look into that and understand that. I know I was dealing with another professional athlete recently, and she was very against using special needs, but she'd never used it. And I was like, no one else complains about it. I'm like, I think if it's well run, then it can actually be amazing for you to get, you know, restocked and reset up. So yeah, certainly have a look at it. Thank you, Philip. That was fantastic. Julia, let's go to you. And
Okay.
I didn't get to put in, I've been asleep, obviously, so I didn't get to put in your better photos, but you can
My
talk us through
better
what's going on.
photos, I was gonna say, other than the watermark ones I stole. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to, it's just so everyone knows, Julia is an age group champion and has been kind enough to talk through this as well. So let's get into it. So do you want to talk us through your bike setup?
Yeah. So I keep the bike in the front, between the arms, and then I don't have the ejector bottles. I have done an Ironman before where I've had 5 bottles, and that's just not, as you get to the special needs thing, you don't need to carry 5 bottles. So I have the bottle between my arms, and then I have one on the down tube, and then I have one where my right shin is. So that's pretty much, and I am not a super heavy sweater. We're going to test the salt part of it soon. But so for a half Ironman, which Scott puts me as full Ironman, but I'm probably more comfortable with the half Ironman fueling, and I don't need more than 3 bottles. So I'm fine with that. If I'm going to use bars, they are cut open, and I usually stick them in my sports bra. And again, I'll not always, but I prefer to race with I'm a cyclist before I'm an Iron person, so I'm used to wearing a jersey. So it kind of stresses me out to wear, you know, a more of a tri kit that has the little teeny pockets, because I like to, you know, be able to carry stuff in my back pockets. And yeah, it works for me. I'm like you guys have said, I've practiced quite a bit. I did time trialing before I started doing triathlon, so I'm pretty used to having to, you know, drink in aero, or, you know, one arm down and drink, or I try to be you know, strategic with when I'm drinking, if I'm having to go around a corner and coming out of aero anyway, that sort of thing. And then I've got the Bontrager, I've got a Trek, so I always have a Bontrager top bento box, and usually I put in there, like I think Danny did a video earlier, I'll use the same thing she does with like the little alt red plastic thing, and I'll put the caffeine in there, and I always carry an extra one because, and I'll just, in the little blister pack, I'll just carry it and I'll put it pretty deep into the bento box. So sometimes I have to fish around for it, but it's usually pretty easy to find. And then I'll put the chews, I don't take them out, and I've been using the pH chews, which are, as Scott and I have discussed, if any guys have used them, they're super, super sticky. So I'll cut the top of they're in a set of 2. I should have one there's downstairs, but and then I open it up, and I'll kind of set it in there, but they're sticky. So I oftentimes will like 3 cliff shots, 2 of those, it's almost a little more of a chew. So those will go in my top. Now, granted, I did an Ironman last year, but I haven't totally figured out how I'm going to carry everything yet for Ironman. So that's kind of a work in progress. But again, we'll use special needs, as we've said. And every time I've had special needs, they're usually, again, waiting. Oftentimes, there's one time I had to stop and go to the bathroom, and they're there, and I'm like, hold my bike, and then you go to the bath. I mean, so there is I think for the most part, they're pretty easy to use. And so I'm probably repeating a lot of things that everyone else has said, but.
No, but I think it's important because you see repetition, you see what a lot of the athletes who are doing very well are also doing similar things, which I think is really important. I think for and something, Julia, that I am pretty keen on you doing, because you have the 3-bottle setup, and I don't believe you're a heavy sweater. I believe that we could be having similar to like Lyndsey had, having all your gels in that bottle on the down tube. I think you could drink your gels. I think your point about the cliff blocks versus the pH tubes, I think it's something that's been repeated a lot, and I don't know what everyone else's experience is, and I've certainly raised it with Andy. They're very sticky, those pH tubes. I think the advantage of them is that there's only 2. However, they are very sticky, whereas the cliff blocks, to their credit, are a bit easier to chew on. So I think there is that toss-up with that, and I think practicing that is very important. I think what we've seen with, say, Lena, how she has her caffeine pill elasticated to her to the crossbar, I think it's like something to consider for you, so you're not having to dig into the bento box, and it keeps it separate. I think like Pat does, how he has that blue pill packet sort of attached to his bike and separate from the bento box. I don't think you're going to lose any aero with that. It sort of separates it out and gives you that opportunity to not have to faff around digging for something. So, I think you're very good and you win races, but you can see there's still works in progress, isn't there? And you're very experienced, but I
definitely.
think we're still working on what you should do for the full Ironman distance. And I think there is that distinction, so everyone is aware, the distinction between the 70.3 and the Ironman, and how you may vary your nutrition and hydration just based on those 2 differing distances.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about that, how that, like I said last time, not using the picky bars on the half, because I'm going, when you're moving that fast, and then just, the picky bars will go into the Ironman. So
exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, and I think that the bar in a 70.3, I know we do recommend it a lot in training, and that just for some extra calories, but my personal opinion, leaning into this pretty hard, is that bars are probably not required for a 70.3. I think if your carbohydrate intake through gels, fluids, and chews is high enough, then I think most of you can lose the bar in a 70.3 race. But again, very individual variability there and open to discussion. But anyway, let's go on to your run and just talk through that. I know we've still got Elliot to talk through as well.
So I started using a naked belt, which for me, I've never been able to wear run belts. They just don't work. They bounce, whatever. So this is just basically like a super tight elastic strap, and it's got pockets, like 2 pockets in the front and like 2 in the back. And so I just carry water. I've done SOS in there before and stuff too. And then for Ironman, for a half Ironman, I don't need to stop and refill those. And obviously I can still take water from the aid stations. It's just that then I can, when I'm fueling, when I want to fuel, I can have some water at the same time. So I've always run with this. It's just worked well for me. And then the gels will go either in the, usually it's in the front of me, where kind of your number, you got the number there. And then there's just these little, very thin pockets. They'll either go in my bra or they'll go, and sometimes, like I just did a half Ironman a couple weeks ago, and honestly, I was like, wait a minute, do I want to put the maple syrup on one side, or do I want to put the pH on one side? It doesn't really matter. I mean, you reach in and you pull out whatever you have. And then same with the blister pack for the caffeine, if I'm taking that for the full, I've had for the full I did last year, I had them in like a little snack baggie. And I had them kind of, and same with the pH, I had them kind of stuffed down my bra. And they're still in the blister pack because you're going to get wet enough that, you know, it's just, again, you can break the blister pack a little bit. And even so, you know, you have them in your bra, and, you know, trust me, at my last Ironman, there was a time where I was like, it finally dawned on me that I should be taking some pH. I was like, oh, where are those? So, I mean, yeah. So even if you have it on you, you're like, I have no idea where that is. So, yeah, that's pretty much.
I think you just convinced every guy on this call that we need to wear a sports bra anyway.
I think, well, all the women have it. Everything goes down there.
It is a big advantage. It's extra pockets, isn't it? So
it is.
You could probably get one of those. I don't know if you've ever seen in, I think they wear them in NFL now, but all the rugby guys, their GPS monitors, they're strapped to their back, but it looks like a man bra, actually, Pat.
Oh, funny.
That they do wear, and I can imagine you wearing one of those and just tucking them in. It looks super fast.
There you go. So
very good. And I think it's interesting, Julia, that you keep your caffeine and salt pills in the blister packs as opposed to taking them out and putting them in that. And I think it's just an option. And I know Elliot's going to talk about that. He actually does the same. So I think. So
you just have to cut the edges of especially the pH salts, because those edges have cut me before.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
You know, it's like aluminum, you know, or aluminum foil. So, yeah. So make sure you round the corners if you do keep them in there. So.
Yeah, a very good point, because you don't want to end up getting cut from having that down your sports bra one. So.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's awesome. And then we're going to move on. Last but not least, Elliot Block. Elliot, you here?
I'm here.
Cool. So I'll let you talk through it. I put up as many pictures as I could, but let's talk about what you do on the bike first.
Okay. So since we're already an hour in, and a lot of people have said a lot of the same things, I'll just try to hit a couple of highlight things that might be different. Same thing with the bento box. You can see I cut the blocks in half. This is actually my road bike from yesterday, not my tri-bike bento box, but you can fit 6 halves in there. So that's enough for 70.3. That's enough, because then I'm also doing gels. The gels, these are old First Endurance gel flasks before First Endurance stopped doing gel flasks. So I fortunately still had 2 of them left. So you clean them out, and then I just refill those actually with pH gels. The 90 grams of carb ones these fit like 4 times.
I wasn't sure if it was 3 or 4
gels.
4. Yeah,
it fits about 4 gels. So
120 grams per flask.
And one of the reasons I use that is I learned on Ultraman, I was taking those 90 gram ones, but they've got a twist top, and it's a pain in the neck and a real mess when you're taking them out of your pocket and you're trying to undo those. Interestingly enough, I was just ordering some more gels. They've just come out with a screw-on top you can put on the top of those that you can suck out of them. So I just ordered one.
So it's a pop top.
Right.
It's
so
a
you
pop
basically,
top now.
you unscrew the top that's on there, and you screw this on. It's what are those? Bite valve.
Yeah.
Bite valve top. So
similar to those flasks that you've got in the picture there.
So I'll experiment with those. But yeah, so for 70.3, this is what I use, because I didn't need to refill. This was enough nutrition for the bike. For Ironman, since I only have 2 of these, I'll end up with just regular gels in my pockets until I hit special needs. And unlike all the really fast people that talk before me, for me, if special needs on the bike, it's a minute or 2. I refill gels and blocks. And then I actually, we've worked on this, Scott, as you know, the caffeine pills have never they don't work for my system. They're too much of a jolt all at once. But what I actually do is I'll usually have a can of coffee, black coffee. You know, you can buy the pre-done cans, and I'll have that both on the bike and the run. I will chug that in at special needs and keep going. And that seems to give me enough of a caffeine plus a little bit of extra liquid. I'm one of the heavy sweaters, and I'm a high sodium content in my sweat.
I didn't know you
And then I
did
carry,
that.
and then I carry, you know, like Pat does. I do 3 bottles. I've got 2 behind the seat, and as you can, if you can see from the picture, I actually do have the Aero bottle that's got the straw. It's right there by my face. I've never had a problem with that. This brand of Shiv actually has one of those built-in things where you can do a bladder, but that I found I couldn't do that. So that's probably Pat used to have one of those too, right? That straw is so long that it's just way too much work.
You'd be out of breath.
Yeah,
before you got any water out of the thing.
I tried using it, and it was way too much work. But this is pretty quick and easy, the short one, and it's literally, you can see when this picture, I'm not in the aero bars. It's literally like an inch from my mouth while I'm doing it. And actually, one of the things I do, this isn't on the slide, on my handlebars, I've got an extra watch, just the cheap Timex watches that it's set with a timer, repeating timer. It goes off every 5 minutes, and that's when I drink. So I don't have to pay attention to the time or whatever. It goes, and then I drink. And I've played with that over the years. Because I know I need to drink more, but if I make that drink more frequent than every 5 minutes, I have to pee too much on the bike. So it's sort of that balance, you know, how often do I do that?
Do you use that time, Elliot, for like every 3 of them to eat or something like that?
Yes,
Is that how you
exactly.
time that?
And then I also don't have to look at my thing. Every third one is the 15 minutes to either do a gel or blocks, and I alternate them, right? So usually the 15 and the 45 is a block, and the 0 and the 30 minutes is the gel. And I kind of work my way through that. And since I'm using the pH, so it's, you know, if I'm not missing, which sometimes happens, if I'm not missing one for some weird reason, that's 110 grams an hour.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I don't know. So that, I mean, everything else everybody's kind of said.
How do you change out your aero bottle between your handlebars if it's got that tube on it?
No, it's got a see, I should have brought it with me. It's got a little latch opening. It just snaps. I grab a bottle from the back and I fill it. So on an Ironman, once I start with 3 bottles, which has got pH in it. And then as the Ironman goes on, I'm grabbing a water bottle in an aid station. And you don't see it because I don't have it on this picture. I have a tube of pH in the bento box, so I can just drop a couple of tablets in and I'm good to go. And that's quick and easy, doesn't slow you down. Okay, I think that's it on that. And then going to the run, which actually, to tell you the truth, ignore those pictures for now, just talking about Ironman. This was the first time I tried totally relying on I did Honu last month, beginning of June, whatever, 70.3, totally relying on the aid stations rather than carrying, because I did Coeur d'Alene. So that was a year ago, June. And was using the flasks. And of course, I start running and realized they were bouncing around too much. Those just don't work. So basically, and you're not seeing the picture, but I have the blister packs of the pH tablets, right? And yes, that's I'd forgotten to mention that to you. You've got to cut around the edges because they're a little sharp. You know, my tri-suit has got pockets on either side of the thighs. So that's where I stick those, easy enough. And I was taking one tablet every, the aid stations are basically every mile, one tablet every aid station, just pop it out of the blister pack. And those are 250 a piece, I think. And then one Martin gel every other aid station. And just drinking water. And then, in terms of caffeine, I like I said, the caffeine pills they haven't worked well for me. But basically, I think starting at about mile 8, I was drinking Coke. Not every aid station. You just you have to play with how it feels in your stomach and how you're doing. So I'm getting some extra caffeine and sugar in that way. And actually, at Honu, I didn't end up even taking the last. I think I skipped the last gel because at that point I had like 4 or 5 Cokes at the end. It's like, yeah, I know I've got enough. I don't need another gel with 2 miles to go. So you just kind of play with that. So you don't have a picture of the blister pack, but I think everybody knows. So that way I'm not really carrying much. I was actually carrying like 2 just regular gels in my back pockets. As a backup, which I didn't end up needing, but the flasks are too big. They just bounce around if you're running. Although I do have to check out this naked belt, which I've never seen. That's an interesting one. And
oh yeah, they have a lot of them.
Yeah, and actually for me, it's more interesting. Like if I'm out here training and if I need to go out for a 2.5 or 3 hour run where I don't have unless I want to park a car and do a loop kind of a thing. You've got to be strategic in what you do. These pictures are just because Scott asked. I wouldn't use these on an Ironman.
These were from your Ultraman, though. Just so
I used it on the Ultraman.
Elliot did the Arizona Ultraman and won his age group, which was fascinating. So, but I just wanted him to show what he used for Ultraman.
And interestingly enough, just to be honest, though. When I do my next Ultraman, I did just say it that way, didn't I? Not this year, it'll be in 24. I probably will not use this. The plan was that way I wouldn't need to stop and refill more than say every 2 hours. As it turns out, that really wasn't an issue. But Scott had asked where I keep the gels, right? So these are the orange mud quiver, because the same thing with Julia's naked belt. I can't do the belts with the bottle around my waist. These work really well. And then up sort of on the shoulders, you've got things. You can actually put 3 gels in each one of those sides. So like if I go out for a 2 hour run, I can have 2 bottles on the back of my shoulders and 6 gels in that. So that's more for training. I wouldn't use that at all on an Ironman. And like I said, now, because with Ultraman, you've got a crew. Yeah. So as it turned out, I probably would have been fine carrying in my pockets 2 gels and 1 bottle and just switching those out with the crew. Crew can basically stop on the road and hand them to you. You don't even need to stop.
I think why I also wanted to put this in is because so often I get questions from athletes who are saying, well, how do I manage to practice my fueling for a run if I've got to carry it all? And so I know a lot of athletes wouldn't expect to run with this in a 70.3 or an Ironman, but what I think could be advantageous if you needed to carry hydration and then other options like the naked belt or whatnot, have them for training so that you've got the nutrition on you to practice and get it in, but knowing that you're not actually going to have to use that and you can rely potentially on, the aid stations and whatnot. It is just an option to use in training, I think. And I think it is very worthwhile considering that and just knowing that you can carry all your nutrition on you, which ultimately is going to make the training a little bit harder, which again isn't a bad thing. But at least it allows you to practice your nutrition.
It doesn't,
Okay,
Scott.
so there you go.
What I use is my tri shorts when I train in tri shorts, because you got to race in them. Oh, I race in a onesie, tri onesie, but when I train in tri shorts, they typically have side elastic pockets. So when you do the runoff brick, you just stuff everything like a chipmunk in your side pockets.
Right.
And I'll carry a hand bottle. It sucks. I hate carrying a bottle in my hand, but I do it. I use one of those collapsibles, you know, those bladder 16-ounce collapsibles, and it works.
Yeah, I use one of those collapsible ones as well. And I think, you know, it is a pain in the ass to run with, but you know that you're getting in whatever you need to get in. And I think that's the important point, because when it comes to racing, then you know you can rely on some of the support.
Right. So the only thing I suppose I would add for those that don't know that might be helpful, one of the reasons I'm probably a little paranoid about carrying all that stuff when I'm going out for a long run. For those of you who don't know, I live in Maui, so pretty much it's 80 degrees and 80% humidity all the time. So on top of that, even before I lived here, I was a heavy sweater. So the last thing I want to do is be an hour away from home and be out of stuff.
Yeah,
it's not a good situation.
We feel our hearts bleed for you.
I know. But the point is, for a lot of people that's probably a little bit of overkill. But you had asked about how I carry it, so anyway.
No, for sure. Thank you, mate, and thank you to everyone. I know we're over time again. I'm just looking. There are some questions. Maybe people have just been putting in. I do have anyone questions on it. I'm just through. That's my new vision. I think a lot of people just make comments in the chat as opposed to asking questions, which is really great. So please, we'll save these. Jonathan, have you managed to save those questions? Maybe just take a screenshot. Sorry. What's that? I think I've got a screenshot of that. Has anyone got any other questions? I just know we are. Louise is saying she's got 2 timers set on her bike computer, one every 10 minutes that says drink and one every 20 minutes that says eat. What bike computer is that, Louise? That sounds pretty good. I don't know if all bike computers can do it.
It's the Garmin 1030. So you can set custom ones and you can type in what you want it to say. And then it just goes every 10 minutes. Because I found that if I just had one to start with, and then I didn't know whether it was the 10, the 20, or I guess you could check the overall time, but it was easier just having something flash up that says eat and something that flashes up and says drink, so I know which one I've got to do.
Yeah, that's really good. I actually have that. I have that on my Garmin watch. I've got the Phoenix 5 and I've got it set 15 minutes and it says eat. I haven't looked if I can set multiple timers with differing messengers, but I'm sure you can. So
you can. I do it. You can set.
Oh, you've got that.
Timer. I don't.
Okay,
I don't remember if you can set a message. I do the same thing with my bike computer.
Yeah, I've got eat. Mine pops up every 15 minutes and says eat, which is very useful. It's fine if I'm not eating. It just is like, okay, yeah, I would have been eating at this point in time. But I think that's a really good point. I think anything that can assist you with, not necessarily having to think too much and just go into autopilot, I think is a very good way of approaching this as well. What's that on the aid stations? Yeah, just to Elizabeth Wood's point, there should be a pre-race on the website and everything like that. There should be what race nutrition is being supplied. I think it sounds like in the athlete briefing, they also go over that. I wouldn't leave it to chance, though, to wait until the athlete briefing before you know what's on there. You certainly want to know well in advance what's going to be supplied on the course, and then appropriately either train with that or make sure you take all your stuff with you. And I know we didn't cover it doing sort of travel and that. We might do another one on that, but certainly something to consider. And Jordan, just a quick point. I know Rita talked about the parchment paper. Jordan lines hers with a Ziploc bag, and Jordan's had a hell of a lot of experience with that as well. So I think that's another good point. I think all these things, like from the parchment paper to the Ziploc bags to the caffeine pill holders to putting a caffeine pill within your gel, the main point here is probably make sure that you practice it and get comfortable with it, and just repetition. Don't do it once, do it like, tens, 20s, 30s sort of times. Okay. Anything else? Does anyone else have any questions? I know it was a bit of a different session today, but hopefully, look, I think if you take one thing away, like Elliot saying, the naked belt, I think that's very worthwhile. Hopefully everyone saw some differing setups. I think what we also saw is a lot of consistency between a lot of very good athletes and the ways in which they're doing their race nutrition from a bike and a run standpoint. So hopefully it's given you a little bit of fuel for thought, excuse the pun, but hopefully it's helped everyone with some of the practicalities of carrying all this stuff. So if there's no more questions, I know we're about 18 minutes over time, but thank you so much to all the athletes who contributed today and sent in their information and also shared their personal experience on this call. I really appreciate it. Everyone in the team really appreciates it, and thank you so much. Cool. Okay, everyone, have a great weekend, and race. Hopefully you get to practice some of this tomorrow. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Philip, you still there, man? Philip.
Yeah, sorry, I was grabbing some coffee.
No, that's all right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks,
man. It was really good. I love your setup. I think it's great. How much is your bike worth?
I have no idea because they sent it to me, but yeah, it's a couple $100,000.
It's what?
I mean, it's I don't know, it's probably like 13K.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful bike, and I like their setup. Is it super easy to squeeze the fluid into that bladder?
Actually, I have trouble doing that. The old one was easier. I feel this one, it's not
as tight.
Yeah. Like you kind of need to press that thing well, and it's not as easy as
it's just hard.
But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, man. I think your setup's really great. I think it's something to definitely think about. I reckon it would be worth for you thinking about having the problem is with the Morton gels on the bike is you can't add water to them to drink because of the hydro gel in it. It means it becomes very, coagulated. So it's like, how do we I would like you to be eating some nutrition on 70.3, maybe. And it is that. And then potentially with your bottles, if something like what happens to you, you can just grab a water bottle and know that you're fine. And so I don't know what we could put, the SIS Go gels, they could go in a water bottle like that one on your down tube, that aero bottle. If that's filled with gels, you're good. You're not going to drop that one. Well, you may drop it, but hopefully not.
The thing is, I actually, today, for example, I had a pretty easy ride, 2 hours, and I used Martin solid bars.
Use the solid bars. Yeah, I don't know. I just worry about how long they're going to take in terms of digestion. They're going to be much slower in terms of gastric emptying. It's going to be slower. So I think they're good for the Ironman. I think you could certainly use them one every hour and that, just from a caloric standpoint, but I wouldn't be relying on them to fuel you for a 70.3.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can discuss all that at another time, man. But I just want to say thank you, and let's have a think about the next session we do with your team. And let's get something on the calendar, and we'll do a presentation to your team again.
Perfect. Well, man.
Cool, man. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.